I'm Darin Mitchell, and I am a marriage and family life therapist student at Texas A&M University. A solution-focused therapist is a therapist who looks for solutions. They look for exceptions to the problem and when a client has not had the issues as severe in the past. It's very future-oriented. It's a way of asking questions to not just make a person feel like maybe there's something wrong with them, but instead for them to understand that they have what's necessary to be able to overcome those problems. It's a belief that although problems may seem very complicated, in fact, they maybe actually have simple answers. Families can be oftentimes stuck in some kind of a negative behavior pattern, and a solution-focused therapist will find ways for it to work. And when they get in the habit of things working, they have a tendency to continue to work. The technique we follow is pretty simple. The first thing we want to do, of course, is to find the problem. What brings this client into our office? And after that client's come into the office and we find out what the problem is, we look for exceptions. And we ask questions such as, when was this problem not as serious in the past? Or when was there a problem when was there a time that this problem wasn't even something that was involved in your life? When we find out that people do have exceptions, we ask their goals. And this is sometimes when we'll ask what is called the miracle question. And the miracle question is pretty simple. We just simply, as if it was a fairy tale, we ask, if tomorrow you woke up and sometime overnight something happened where this was no longer a problem, when is the first time you'd notice that? And oftentimes it's the first time a client will really ever look at their lives apart from the problem. After that, we'll look for scaling questions. We'll ask something along the lines of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is this right now in your life? And then that way we have not only a baseline, but we can also find out how serious the issue is. And then the last two things we'll normally do is give encouragement, because people normally have been doing something to try to get better. And then finally we'll give some homework and try to get the client to go home and do something that might help the situation to be better. I believe in people, and if I could use the physical body as an example, I think that the human body wants to heal itself. And you may have to go to the doctor because there's just something you can't figure out. But you don't have to go to the doctor every time. And so the thing I like about solution-focused therapy is the fact that it does believe that people are able to help solve their problems, and that they want to solve their problems. And all you're doing is intervening only as much as necessary to help get them back to being healthy. Also, I like the fact that it shows people that they're not broken. That a behavior issue that they may have, or some negative cycle they may be stuck in, doesn't mean that they're sick. It doesn't mean they have a cancer of the mind or of the soul. Instead, it just means something needs to change for them to be better. I like the fact also that each session, and we have to be honest about this, it's very open and closed. And as a counselor, one thing I've realized over the last 10 years is sometimes I only get one shot. I get one opportunity to help change someone's life. And solution focus can, because of the way that it's designed, it has an opening and it has a closing. And if a person never comes back, oftentimes it gives them what they need in order to move forward. Also, I think it gives someone hope. Instead of someone walking in and you telling them that they're sick or there's something wrong with them, you just simply let them know that they have a unique problem. And just sometimes that in itself will normalize their situation, where they no longer feel like there's something wrong with them they'll never get over, but instead it's just a simple step to get them in the right direction. And then finally, I think it shows the client that they're not victims. And if they never come back, they have a technique for reframing what's happened in their lives. And instead of always looking at what's negative in their life, they can start looking at where they have succeeded. And even one of the most exciting parts of this approach is to see someone's eyes come open and to have them realize, you know, we have been able to overcome this problem in the past. Some would say that it's too simple, that because you're not diving into people's past and because you're not getting into deep psychological issues and solving problems that happen from people's childhood, that you're not doing them justice. At the same time, if you think about the mental health as a triangle, and the bottom of the triangle is a person's needs, and then right above that is their thinking. And what's sticking, like as if you were an iceberg, what's sticking up that we can see out of the water is your behavior. We're working on the behavior. But there's no way that you can work on the behavior and not actually touch a person's thinking and help to meet those needs. Also, some would say that solution-focused therapy says that the past doesn't matter, neither does emotion. that we never actually deal with the person's past or their emotions, and that's not true. We don't focus on their past and we don't focus on their emotions, but we do bring them in as they relate to the present problem. And then finally, some would say that it's just a Band-Aid, that it's not workable. But I would say the same thing as it is in the human body, and that is that there is some truth to that. We're not trying to solve past issues. And at the same time, you have to ask the question, do we need to solve everyone's past issues? Oftentimes, I think that people struggle to find solutions to those issues themselves. And if given some help, they can find it much better than we can ever do. We have a couple that comes into the office and they mark down on the sheet what we would simply call the generic communication problems. They come in, we have a seat, and they start to tell me what's going on. They've been married 3 years. For the first 2 years, things went really well. The husband joined the Army. Now they're here, we'll say, at Fort Hood, and things just don't seem to be going as well. So you'll start by asking them, what is the problem? And oftentimes, even a client can't tell you what it is that's really bothering them. They'll say it's communication, and you start to draw out that story. And when you draw out the story, that really gives a counselor an opportunity to come into what we call a therapeutic alliance. It's where you show the client that you care, and the client starts to be able to really just open up to you and to tell you more about what they're thinking. So you probe about the Army, and you ask them the question, is it the Army? And they like the Army. And then you ask them about their child that was born, and they say that's not a problem. And so finally you start going to the exceptions questions, and you say, when was this not nearly as serious as it is right now? And they come back and they tell you, well, it was that way even when we first joined the Army. And you start asking more about the exceptions. What have you done lately that makes it assuage or not be as hard? And the wife jokes with you and says, well, every payday it's not nearly as hard. And that makes a light come on. So you start asking the question that maybe the exceptions are primarily because of a financial issue that's going on. So you ask the question and the goals as you start to look at your goals, and you say, I want to ask you a question. We call it the miracle question. And so you give the client a few minutes or a few seconds to understand, hey, this is going to seem a little strange, but I want you to go back in time. I want you to pretend that you went to sleep last night. And sometime during the night, the problem that you had was miraculously solved. When is the first time this morning you would have noticed it was solved? And oftentimes that's when a young couple can look at you and say, it's when the bill collector didn't call. And you ask the question at that point, well, where would you say you're at right now on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as the stress in your finances? And they say, it's got to be an 8. And you ask the question, well, what do you think it would be? The problem that brought you in, how low would it have to go before you felt like it was solved? And they may come back with the answer of maybe a 4. So at that point, you start looking at for some encouragement and some homework, and explain to the couple as you've gone through counseling that, hey, you're coming in here is even a step in the right direction, and this is really going to help you. You're already making strides. Your communication's already good. You're able to overcome all these issues, and you're going to be able to make it through. So in the homework portion, after realizing it really is nothing more than the stresses of finances are pulling them apart, the homework normally is very pointed. And so I may give the homework of going to see a financial counselor. So the next day they go to see a financial counselor, and they realize while they're in the office, as they feel all the tension just starting to go away, that this really was a thing that was really hurting them. And that just by saving $50 every 2 weeks, it gives them a whole new outlook at life. So that night while they're eating dinner, they talk about coming back to my office for counseling, and the wife looks at the husband and says, you know, I don't think we need to go back. Maybe we didn't even need to go in the first place. And the husband says, you know, you might be right. So just by simply taking a behavior and modifying it, you've given them the ability to overcome this deep-seated problem they thought they had, that didn't stem from their childhood. It didn't stem from some incompatibility issue. Instead, it was just a behavioral change, and they needed a solution. I think I can really sum it up using just 6 words. And it's a therapist that asks, what's working instead of what's wrong?